Hey everyone, happy Sunday. Today is day 3 of our 4-day series talking about toxic behaviors that create and escalate conflict in relationships. And I'm going to be chatting here in a minute with Coach Julia Seal. She's come on. I'm going to invite you, Julia. Let's see if I got the hang of it today. And today our focus is going to be on the behavior, the toxic behavior of sulking and stonewalling. Hi, friend.
Hi there.
Happy Sunday. How are you?
Happy Sunday. I'm good, actually. It's incredibly cold here, so I just I always want to go to bed and lie on the couch, It's like
Yeah, I guess it's not supposed to be cold this time of year where you are in Cape Town. No.
midsummer. Yeah, it's craziness.
World's
Anyway.
gone wild. Well, stay warm. I've got a sunny day ahead of me, which is exciting, but it's always good to, deal with the weather we have.
Yeah, have you been cycling today?
No, 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 no. Yesterday I did 45 kilometers in 2 different outings, one before we talked and one
Yeah,
after. So today is not a cycling day. It's a rest day.
yeah, race day.
Awesome. Well, I'm really excited about our topic today of sulking and stonewalling because you hear those words and you're like, oh, yeah, those are definitely toxic behaviors that we don't want to do and we don't want to experience. I'm really curious because I don't feel like I have a lot of kind of background knowledge on these two topics. So it'll be interesting to hear from you and learn how they show up, what they are, and then how we can kind of mitigate and avoid them. So I thought it'd be good to start out, yesterday we always come back around to this topic of how to neutralize these behaviors to react, not to react, but to respond. I thought it'd be good for you to give us kind of a reminder about that. If you didn't catch the videos that we've done before, this is our third in a series of 4 about toxic behaviors that escalate conflict in relationships. So make sure to check the rest out on Instagram. But go ahead, Julia. Remind us what this is about neutralizing kind of the behaviors and responding.
Yes. So, yeah, Jamie, so what we're talking about today actually is toxic conflict as opposed to conflict, which is going to exist in any relationship. So we need to just remember that that's what we're looking at. And it's very specific, toxic conflict. It is the conflict that's actually destructive to social relationships. Now, it's so interesting because often we just see conflict and we immediately make it a bad thing. And that's one that I really want to encourage people. The more you get comfortable with conflict and managing your kind of your inner reactions, you can stay in a conflict situation for longer, which is incredibly healthy for relationships because then people get to say what they need to say. And, today's topic is actually all about when someone feels like they can't speak up. And that's what's happening for some reason. So, I think it's just really important to, and this one speaks a lot to the self-soothing that we spoke over the last 2 days and the inner management. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail. But to be really clear, the word conflict, I think I put a hashtag or somewhere on my social, and people just go, oh, conflict, oh, panic, And I think that's what we want to really move into kind of as we evolve ourselves, is how do we stay in conflict situations longer and longer in order to decrease the heat in the interaction, either if it's with you or in a group or between you and 2 people, and then build the relationship from there. So it's got a really great intent, is that the longer you can stay there in a neutral space, right? Not in a highly triggered, inflamed space.
Yeah.
But then you start opening up and bringing curiosity and a little bit of breath and lightness into the whole thing.
Yeah.
And today's really about, and I think maybe just to kind of define what we're talking about, because stonewalling is really what we call it in the coaching world, but I don't think a lot of people actually even know what
Right.
that means.
Mm-hmm.
So I use sulking sometimes because a lot of us in midlife have teenagers around us, so we know what the sulk is, but it's really more like the cold shoulder.
Right.
So you're in the middle of an argument with someone, and we might actually do it ourselves. It's quite common to do it in our relationships, in our love relationships, right? You're in the middle of a fight, and then you just go, "No, I can't talk anymore," and then
And
you
the
just
shutting down.
shut down,
Right.
right? And so that's really what it is the silent treatment. And then you can go like with a whole week of silent treatment, withdrawal and refusal to
Mhm.
engage. And then in where you see it in teams typically is people being reluctant to express
Sure.
themselves and to add their opinion. So, if you're sitting in a group of 8 people and there's always those people that are very quiet, have a look and see if there's something toxic going on there where they feel unsafe that they need to do that.
That's interesting. Okay. So tell us a little bit more about the root then of this behavior or this reaction. Where does it kind of come from? You touched on it a little bit, but I'd love to hear you expand on that a bit more.
Yeah, so this one shows up actually a lot when blame, criticism, and defensiveness, especially blame and criticism,
Mm.
are running rife in the interaction, right?
Okay.
So that interaction is full of you this and unskillful requests and you that. And so
Hmm.
that's running around. And so that's people are not, or the one person is not feeling safe. So
Hmm.
that this is a particular behavior where someone is not feeling safe. Now we're not talking physically safe as
Right.
in physical violence, but
Right.
emotionally safe. So be aware, and we talked to the last 2 days about blame and criticism and defensiveness, that if you're seeing someone giving you the cold shoulder, or if you're feeling the need to withdraw, be aware that the dynamic that's going on in there is that blame, criticism, defensiveness, double side coin.
Hmm.
But it's actually quite a healthy behavior when it's done quietly, quickly, and you move forward and through it fast. It's not healthy. The cold shoulder is not healthy if you do it for to your partner for the next 4 hours, right? Because
Yeah.
if you neglect conflict, and we talk about that tomorrow, that escalates contempt. So we don't ever want to neglect this. You have to go back into the interaction. But with
Right.
stonewalling or the cold shoulder is people are actually just trying to escape the other toxic behaviors, and they are overwhelmed with emotion. So they're actually like too full, too
Hmm.
full.
Hmm. Is it an attempt to, maybe a misguided attempt to de-escalate the conflict, or is it just an attempt to protect oneself from the uncomfortable emotions?
I don't think it's coming from such a responsive place as trying to de-escalate conflict.
Okay.
It might be because if the conflict's very hot, like there's shouting, it
Mm.
might be a way of just, if you stop engaging with someone, the shouting eventually is going to stop. So it
Right.
could be that, but it's not particularly skillful. So the person is not necessarily in the responsive mode, which is what we're trying to get to. It is still a reactive behavior
Mm.
to the criticism, to the blame that you're seeing, and
Mhm.
then literally shutting down. So it's very much I'm not safe. I'm not safe to
Right.
express myself. I need to tune out and I have to get away. That's really what it is.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
I have a question here for you. So let's say we're in a relationship where this stonewalling or the kind of cold shoulder happens often when we're expressing our needs or asking for something. Um, the person that is choosing to disengage or stonewall or sulk, pull away, may not realize the consequences of that behavior to back on the other person. I wonder if you have some insights into how does that actually create more problems then in the
Hmm.
relationship on the side of the person who's being stonewalled or
Yeah, so if you're the one who's doing it, you have to be safe first, right? So we have to get to a place of safety before your executive functioning part of your brain is going to start working again.
Hmm.
So and you will only almost see that in reflection of the impact that this had on the conversation. And what I see, and I've coached a lot of couples in sort of couples coaching, is a lot of couples, they have a flaming row and then nothing gets said. You know, one withdraws and then it kind of dies down, and after a week life goes back to normal and nothing's ever spoken about. Right, so that's how a lot of people choose to end a conflict situation in a relationship. But what it's actually doing is it doesn't garner you any respect from the other person. It builds contempt and it gives them more fuel for criticism. And remember that the original thing that you were reading from them, the criticism or the blame, was actually just an unskilled complaint on their part. So they're still not getting their complaint across. So they're just going to keep trying and keep trying and keep trying, and it won't get more skilled. So you need to, in the situation again, is you will notice when you are too full. You know, some people describe it as they feel like their head's going to explode. You know, it's like, Notice that and see what you need in the moment. Some people can bring themselves back to a responsive mode from that place with, you know, a couple of breaths. But it's really healthy to just to say, I need 5 minutes time out. Or a really good one is, I need to go to the bathroom. Just hang on there, I need to go to the bathroom. And that gives you just that time to settle down. And then when you're settling down, to assess, how do I help the other person understand that I wasn't feeling safe in that interaction? And to be able to, you've come out and say, and it can be tricky here, because if someone is shouting and you're the one who's going into this cold shoulder behavior, you can feel a little bit kind of more special than them. Like, I'm the one who's been hurt and they're the ones that are hurting me. So be careful of that dynamic, because if you are asking the other person, help me feel safer in order to speak, you know, if they're still angry and they're still in reactive mode, that isn't going to help appealing to, like, help me feel safe. So to have that conversation when all the heat is out, that can help. That can help. Yeah.
What is the difference between taking some time to let that heat calm down and giving the cold shoulder? Because there's maybe an element of perception too of how quickly the other person wants you to come back around and engage, and let's keep going with this until we figure it out. How can someone be sensitive about not being perceived as giving a cold shoulder when they're really just taking a time out to calm themselves?
I think to be as clear as you can. You know, I'm full right now. I'm a bit overwhelmed by what you're saying. I need 5 minutes, or can we talk about this after lunch?
Okay.
You know, so really, but kind of create that next space engagement. So then the person knows, right, it's going to happen again. And the more you do this, right, especially if it's with the same person all the time, they're going to understand, and they will start building a level of compassion, and they'll also see in themselves that something they were doing had that impact on you.
Sure.
And, you know, so it is a bit of a play. And if you do come back to the engagement, you know, when you promised you would, 5 minutes later or 2 hours later, then you continue the conversation in a different way. And so you reassured the other person that it's actually going to be resolved, that they are going to be heard.
Yeah.
You know, because you're being triggered by, you know, the two sides of it, right? You're being triggered, yes, by their words, because perhaps they are doing an unskillful complaint or unskillful feedback with a personal attack. So that could be very true. But it's also your perception of what they're saying.
Right.
He's attacking me, you know, I'm feeling powerless. This isn't fair. So it's almost a 50-50 relationship, or 50% them and 50% you, because you're perceiving it and reading it through your whole wiring. And, we talked about how your brain filters what to let in to the executive brain. So if it's been primed to run when it hears people shouting, it's going to keep getting overwhelmed and full the minute someone raises their voice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think this is, it's a really interesting topic because I think there's a lot of space for those of us that maybe don't have the kind of training or depth of knowledge that you do to think that we're just doing something healthy by, giving maybe too much space. We think a whole day, or I'll talk to you about this, too far down the line, and maybe not anticipating that cold shoulder that even if we think we're taking it for our own good, it could be also impacting the other person, creating anxiety or not making it worse for them as we kind of wait to sort through these things together, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's important for the person on the other side. So if you're experiencing the cold shoulder regularly in an interaction, is have a look at how you're expressing what it is that you're trying to say. So really have a look and notice, are you saying you should be doing this and you did that? I mean, I did it today with the way that when Fraser came back from the grocery shop, and it's like, why do you always pack the fridge like that? And I was like, oh, like, what is that, Julia? And so notice those words, and the minute you kind of throw out a you, why are you? Got that personal attack. So if you're noticing that, your partner, your friend, kind of gives you the cold shoulder, have a look and see what you're doing that's contributing to it, because they are feeling attacked.
Yeah.
So make sure you clean up from your side too. And then wherever you can, if you think back to what we were talking about on the first day about criticism and blame, is how do you express yourself more clearly? How do you say it again? How do you open up curiosity so that they might actually say something, ask a question, lighten it a bit. Because all we're trying to do is neutralize that heat in the moment.
Yeah, this is good
advice. And the heat in our bodies is that very reactive feeling, right? And we all want to get away from that heat. Whatever way it is, run away or explode heat, You're either a volcano or you're a train,
Yeah, it's really interesting. I want to also welcome the people that are joining us live. Thanks for showing up. If you have any questions for Julia or an angle you want to go at this topic of stonewalling and sulking, just let us know in the comments. If you're watching the replay, feel free also to leave something in the comments. We'll come back around to it and reply a little later. So I'm thinking, Julia, what's coming to mind for me is, we talked about criticism and blame on our first talk. Yesterday was about defensiveness. Today is about the stonewalling. I'm not the expert, but I see that these things are related. One produces the other, or one can trigger the other. And it sounds like this just creates almost a vicious cycle. I'd be curious to hear you explain a little bit how maybe stonewalling fits into, if there is kind of a relationship between these behaviors, how they play out on one another.
Yeah, I think they are all related because we all interact in different ways, and react in different ways. So, you'll have somebody who's using blame in a particular way is going to have you're going to get that typical response, but they are almost like a self-spinning loop. So for example, like we were saying, blame and criticism, the flip side of that is defensiveness. And then you have stonewalling. Well, people use stonewalling because they're too full, because they've perceived too much blame and criticism. And then what we look at tomorrow, contempt. Contempt increases the more you withdraw from engaging from someone who's trying to get across. So they are all interlinked, but you'll still and we all do all of them, right?
Sure. Yes.
We have our strong ones. We have the ones that we recognize first. So, and it's interesting because we might do one in a certain situation and another, we might do one with our love partner a lot. but actually at work we might employ a different one. That's really interesting to see that. But, you know, all you need to do is start playing with one of them.
Yeah.
Because again, it's that process, you know, that self-coaching process really of increasing your awareness to even notice what's happening to you in the moment.
Yeah.
And then starting to develop the insight after a bit of reflection about, you know, what were the thoughts running in my mind? What is the emotion that shows up? What are the red flags in my body? And how might I want to kind of act next time?
Sure.
So, you know, so just go to whichever one you typically do the most, because it will impact all the others, because it's really about two people, mostly two people, trying to talk to each other about something, trying to get their point of view across, trying to be heard. And there's a whole lot of stuff in between, you know, that broken telephone that we played as kids.
Yeah, and there's never a single round where the message doesn't get completely twisted, no matter how you play.
And that's why we fight over the same, like a love relationship will fight over the same things over and over again, because that pattern has almost been established and wired into you, right? Between the two of you, you've almost wired it into the DNA of your relationship. So with one of you starting to act slightly differently, you start to unravel that wiring. Yeah, so it's your own inner wiring, but it's also the dynamic between you that you set up for the same old arguments over and over again. And because you never resolve the conflict, so you never take the heat out. Heat, you know, you can either take the heat out by actually going through the fire and sitting there together and finding out what the other one's trying to say, or you can just ignore it. Right. And I grew up in a family where we just pushed everything under the carpet, and then it festered there for years, you know, and
Yeah.
grew spiders and snakes and things.
Well,
And
I
that's
think that that could be
yeah.
that can be pretty common too. I think my family was a little bit more on that side as well. What are the consequences of like a long-term consequence in a relationship that has lots of this pattern of going into the cold shoulder, of kind of pushing the issues under the rug? What kind of happens?
Yeah. So actually, with all four of these behaviors, these toxic behaviors, we are talking the breakdown of a relationship. They are absolute poison to a relationship. So the long-term effects is the reduced respect between the two of you, and ultimately contempt comes in. And once you have contempt in a relationship, you're very close to the relationship death. Takes a long time to get back from that. So that is why we want to actually look at these in the face and neutralize them as soon as we can, because they are poisonous. And you know, the theory behind these comes actually from a couple of sources, but two sources. Are you
Okay.
okay?
I think my cat just threw itself against the door because I heard a
I thought,
sound.
I thought maybe it was another firework going on in Quito.
I think we're fine. I'm sorry. It just startled me. Go ahead.
So, so, so it comes from two sources. One, the Buddhists talk a lot about the mind poisons, behavioral poisons, and the antidotes. So this work is informed by that. But then a guy, Dr. John Gottman, and his wife, they have taken these toxic behaviors and done huge amounts of research. They've got like 40 years worth of research on married couples. And they've done kind of, I think, 3,000 to 5,000 couples to see, and they can predict divorce by the amount of these four toxic behaviors that they see in a relationship. So
That
that
should
for
be
me,
encouraging, but it's also terrifying. It's like, okay,
yeah.
these are the four to pay attention to, really.
And it doesn't necessarily mean like definitely predicted to divorce,
Yeah.
but what happens to a relationship where you never talk about stuff or you keep following the same patterns?
Yeah.
you kind of you disconnect from each other, right? And that real love connection that you have with your sister or your mum or your partner kind of hardens and gets dull, and it's not life-giving. So
Right.
you're kind of going through the routines and the rituals. So possibly Christmas is fun. It's fun to get together because you've got all the family rituals and this is how we did it as kids. But is there really a huge upwelling of delight and love when you're together? And so any of these toxic behaviors, there is destruction of the relationship, but destruction doesn't always mean you separate. It can
Right.
just mean the relationship gets harder and harder and there's less joy in it.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not a contributor to whole being happiness.
Yeah, right. And I love you keep using this word to bring lightness into things. I think that that's beautiful because you start to even just imagine, gosh, all right, without some of these behaviors, how it would feel so much different to just show up in daily interactions with someone that you care about. And definitely lightness is the right word for it.
It is, because it's all you have to is a tiny little crack, right? That
Mhm.
famous song, and let the light in. Just a
Mhm.
tiny little bit of light in, and it starts to shift things.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And that's really important. So yeah, I think, and Dr. John Gottman, he actually talks about these four behaviors as the four horsemen of the apocalypse.
I've heard of
Uh,
that.
yeah, so, and the reason he calls them that, so if you're from a
Yeah,
Christian tradition,
right.
you'll know the four horsemen, right, from the book of Revelation.
Oh, that's why I've heard of it. Okay.
War, war, pestilence, something, and death, right? And they come down and they ride through the world before the second coming of Christ. So they are horrific. War, famine, death, and pests or something, pestilence, horrible. And they're riding on their horses through the world. So that's how destructive they are. That's how
These four
poisonous
toxic
they are.
behaviors for relationships. I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so the whole idea behind this series of 4 talks is to talk about ways to bring it down a notch, bring
Yeah.
the heat down a notch over the holidays,
Yeah.
practice neutralizing even a tiny thing. Like we talked yesterday about what's the 2% truth of criticism behind a criticism. And that is enough to crack open something slightly different in the dynamic between you. And that's actually all you need.
Yeah.
And you keep doing that and keep doing tiny little positive shifts, tiny little movements, and the relationship will look completely different. Don't need to sit down and have one of those like long heart to heart conversations.
Yeah.
You can if you want, but you don't have to. Yeah.
Yeah. And with the
Yeah.
holidays coming up, people will be getting together more and more here throughout the month with the different holidays that different people celebrate. How can they bring more light into those spaces and those relationships if they are feeling kind of tight with them at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I would go back to our very first video that we did on the Q&A, and if you're struggling, like maybe there's just too much information that Jamie and I have been sharing over these last couple of days, is practice my favorite coaching tool, which is 3 breaths. And I can see actually I've got an old client who's on the call with us now, and she'll know all about my 3 breaths. She's
Mhm.
probably laughing right now, because that is enough. If
Mm.
you're heading into the holidays and all of this is too much information, start using breath to bring yourself back to yourself, to self-soothe, right? Because that's what you need. Whenever there's conflict, you need to find yourself find that safe space again, get back into the parasympathetic nervous system, wake that up, and you could do 3 breaths. And another incredibly lovely breath to practice is a belly breath. So you're sitting at the dinner table, you're feeling like Father Christmas because you've eaten too much. Practice being Father Christmas, and you stick your belly right out and you breathe, and then you let your belly breathe out, and that that's a wonderful tool to also use. And if that's all you're doing as letting the light in, that will change already how you're showing up in the moment.
Awesome. Good. That's
Yeah.
great advice. Thank you. I know we're trying to keep these to half an hour. We've got a group coaching program coming up. It'd be great if you could just mention a little bit about that. And then we'll see what else we say before we go. Go ahead.
Yeah, you're copping out of that one, Jamie.
I talked about it the
I
past
know.
2 days.
So it's fun. So what Jamie and I have a 2-month program starting next week on Wednesday, which is designed to see us all through the holidays. So it's a small group coaching program for a group of women who want to really explore their relationships through the holiday season. And then into the new year, how do we take what we learned from Christmas and reset our relationships? And I was thinking about it today because, you know, don't be put off that if you're not in a high conflict relationship, this program is for everyone and it will work incredibly well. You know, even if there's one person who's in a high conflict situation, someone who's just really interested in learning more, or someone who's actually wanting to reset a relationship, we will learn from each other. It's actually a fantastic dynamic to coach together. So the idea is we meet weekly and we have a coaching session together every week. And then we also keep connected on WhatsApp. So we will support each other every day if we need to through WhatsApp. And yeah, you'll have 2 private calls with me as well. So then we can go deeper into what you're really learning, what you're really seeing, and how to set you up beyond that. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think it's really fun for relationships right now, you know.
Yeah. I wanted to hear how you explained it. You explained it very well. I want to add though, what I love about this program and working, you know, with a coach like yourself is it can be so hard to take these concepts and raise our conscious awareness enough that in the day-to-day we're applying them and living them and not falling back into our old patterns. So having a program like this and having Julia there every day through WhatsApp, and then this weekly small group of women that are all looking to achieve kind of the same change in their lives and learn around the similar topic. It's just a great way to make those behaviors stick and to really make the shift in your mindset profound, because it's not just you alone doing it. You're doing it with support of an expert and with a group of women who are all bringing our energy and our desire to change and improve and grow and bring lightness into our relationships together. So I love that about it, and I can't wait to start. It's next Wednesday, and the sign up link is in my bio here on the Lemon Rebellion page. I think on your page as well, Julia, to get through to it, so you guys can sign up for it. It's going to start on Wednesday. It's going to be awesome. We have just a couple spaces left, so make sure if you've been interested in this series of talks to go over to the webpage, sign up for the program. It's going to be really great, and I'm glad that we're doing this.
Be lots of fun. And so we will be talking this type of hot conflict. And then I will also be introducing some really interesting other concepts about power and inner power and relationship with ourselves. And then also, like, I will be teaching or possibly showing you through examples of my own life is how to self-coach. How do we learn to coach ourselves? Because this is the whole thing. I mean, I've been coaching now 12, 13 years, and why I'm so passionate about it is because you really do see change with coaching. But how do you get the change to stick? Yeah. As Jamie was saying. And so through the 8 weeks, we'll also be showing you techniques to use so these things stick. So it's not like a magic formula that you're suddenly different, but you're going to have so much more than you've got now, you know, and fun. It'll be fun to be together. Yeah.
I love the idea of, so imagine a compass, right? And you've got your needle pointed to due north. Now, if you're taking a walk and that's where you're headed, that's good. But if you move it even just a tiny bit one way or the other, over time, the destination you'll end up at, if you're walking in a line just a wee bit different on the compass, you could end up thousands and thousands of miles apart on a different path. And I think that a program like this with focused on relationships and helping us grow, it's moving that needle in this moment a little bit this way. And the consequences are just compounded and amplified in the future in terms of how they impact our relationships with ourselves, our relationships with our loved ones, our family, our friends, our coworkers, and everyone around us, because suddenly you have skill sets and mindsets and new tools to literally transform every relationship that comes across your path in the future. And again, I'm also just in love with the coaching model. So I wanted to point that out because a small change today can be a huge impact on your
They
quality of
do.
life.
And like, so a tiny thing that you do, like next week with us, for example, what you want to do is think about yourself and your relationships this time next year. Do you want to be in exactly the same place? Versus if you make a little tiny shift tomorrow or next week with us, and then that shift, you're going to keep doing those tiny shifts all the way through the year. And so this time next year, well, like unimaginable, actually.
Yeah, that's exciting. Awesome, Julie. It's always fun to talk to you. So tomorrow we're talking about the final of the four toxic behaviors, contempt, and this one will also be super interesting.
Yeah. It just sounds awful and toxic, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does. But
Contempt.
we can learn and we can see ourselves because, like you said, all four of these kind of toxic behaviors, like it or not, as evolved as we may be or not, like we're all using them at some time in some degree, right? In our lives or certain situations. It's part of the beautiful, messy human experience. So we can always learn and grow. And
Yeah.
I think tomorrow, talking about contempt, we'll be talking to the devil in the face because that's a heavy one.
Oh, that's perfect. It'll be fun. Same time, isn't it? Same
Same
time
time,
tomorrow.
Sunday.
Yeah.
Yep.
It'll be
All right. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks if you're watching the replay again. Leave some comments. Let us know what you thought. And if you're interested in this program, check it out. The link's in the bio. We'll catch you all tomorrow, same time, same place.
Yeah. Bye. Bye,
Thanks
everyone.
everyone. Bye.
Bye.